Welcome to video 2 in the Knitty Gritty Intro to Knitting video series. Today we're going to show you the next building block in knitting, which is the knit stitch. If you missed my first video on how to cast stitches onto your needle, you'll need to make sure you go back and watch that video before you can actually begin knitting. And you can find that in the link below. Everything else we do in knitting is simply a variation of the knit stitch. So make sure that you get this one down before trying more advanced techniques. Let's get to it. Now the first stitch that we learn in knitting is in fact called the knit stitch. That's what we're going to go through today. So I've started already by casting on 10 stitches. If you're not sure how we got to this point, you can go back and watch my other videos on a basic cast on or even a long tail cast on. But today I started with the long tail cast on and we cast on 10 stitches. What I want to point out first is I've got 2 strands of yarn coming down from my needle. The first strand is this one on my left. That's what we call the tag end of your yarn. This is not the strand that we'll be using to knit. You want to make sure that you're not accidentally knitting that because you're going to run out real quick. What we're going to knit with is this strand, which goes back to my actual ball of yarn. So I'm going to take that in my right hand and make sure I pull it out over here. You're going to hold that yarn in your fingers on your needle hand. So the first step, I'm going to separate these stitches out a little bit so you can see a little bit better, but we're going to slide these up toward the tip of my needle, and I'm going to pull this one out a little bit, again, just so you can see. I'm going to take the end of my needle and I'm going to work it through this first stitch. You can see as I pull it apart, there's a little bit of a gap there. I'm going to put the end of my needle through that stitch. And it's really going to come out the other side. So you can see there it's coming out the back. So going from left to right, the tip of my needle is going to go through that stitch. And with my working yarn, I'm going to wrap that working yarn around the tip of the needle. I'm going to pull it snug up against the stitch. The reason for that is I'm going to have to pull this needle back through the stitch the same way I put it in the first place. As I bring that back, I'm going to keep the tip of my needle against the other needle, slide it back. You can see I catch that yarn that was wrapped around the end of the needle. I'm going to pull it through and this entire stitch is going to slip off the end. So all we're doing when we're knitting is we're creating a series of loops. And we're going to transfer all of these loops on this needle over to this needle with a new set of loops. So let's watch that again. I'm going to slide that stitch up toward the tip of my needle. I'm going to insert into the stitch going from the left to the right all the way through. Again, you can see how it comes out the back. I'm going to take, again, my working yarn. Take my working yarn, I'm going to wrap it around the end of the needle, pull it snug against the stitch, and slowly work it back through. You can see right here, that's my new loop, and I'm going to slide the old loop off. Now I've got 2 onto the right needle. Again, going from left to the right, into that stitch, out the back, wrap it, pull it snug, and pull the whole tip of that needle back through the stitch the way it came in. Slip the old loop off the other needle, and that's it. Let's finish up these 10 stitches. There are many ways to hold your yarn when you knit. There are quicker ways to knit, but this is by far the simplest beginner method. Okay, we'll go slow again on these last 2 stitches. From left to the right, through and out the back, wrap, pull it back through the way it came, slip it off the needle. Left to right, through, out the back, wrap it, pull it tight, keep it close, slip it off. I've transferred all 10 stitches from the left to the right. Now, what happens when you get to the end of your row, we're going to turn that needle now. So now this is the needle with all the stitches or the loops on it. So once you get to the end of the row, you're going to start off that new row the exact same way, and then every time you get to the end of the row, you just repeat. We're going to go from the left to the right, wrap, pull it back through, slip it off. You want to make sure you don't pull your yarn too tight after you slip it off that needle. Once it's over here, you don't really need to pull it tight. You want to keep that loose. Otherwise, you're going to struggle to be able to get the needle through the stitch every single time. It's going to make your pattern look a little off as well the further you get down your piece of work. Last one here, wrap it up. So now you can see my piece is already getting bigger.